We're now 3 years into Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and it's increasingly evident that Vladimir Putin's military adventure has turned into a prolonged, humiliating failure. Russia, once perceived as this military juggernaut, has exposed itself as a chaotic, incompetent, and strategically incoherent force, and Ukraine, despite being smaller in size and population, continues to resist, to innovate, to adapt, proving that Russia's war of attrition is unwinnable. And Putin envisaged a quick victory, perhaps as he boasted and as Zelensky confirmed in the Oval Office, a 3-day conquest of Kyiv, a seamless installation of a puppet government, and the submission of Ukraine to Moscow's all-encompassing will. Instead, Putin's found himself mired in a war that's bled his military, his economy, and his international credibility dry. And the very fact that Ukraine remains standing after 3 long years, launching deep strike drone attacks into Russian territory and ramping up its domestic defense industry, speaks volumes about the weakness of Moscow's strategic position. Nothing exemplifies Russian military incompetence better than the self-inflicted wounds. On January the 13th, a particularly embarrassing incident occurred in the Kursk Oblast. Russian drones mistakenly struck their own rare and expensive North Korean-supplied air defense system. This wasn't just a case of mistaken identity, it was a catastrophic failure of coordination, communication, and basic military logic. And the Russians, seemingly unaccustomed to new equipment, mistook their own assets for enemy hardware and obliterated them. This isn't an isolated instance. It's not one case. Russian forces have repeatedly engaged in friendly fire incidents, attacking their own troops and allies because of poor battlefield coordination. In Kursk, a language barrier between Russian and North Korean forces have led to deadly clashes, with Russian troops mistakenly opening fire on their supposed allies. Even worse, North Korean troops have reportedly been used as drone bait, cannon fodder, sacrificed in a desperate bid to draw out Ukrainian attacks. Each of these failures chips away at Russian morale. Russian soldiers have no faith in their leadership, and reports of North Korean troops being ordered to commit suicide rather than be captured highlights the brutal and desperate state of the Russian war effort, the Russian war machine. With over 822,030 casualties recorded as of January the 21st, the human cost is staggering and the domestic consequences are mounting. Putin's grip on power weakens with every blunder, whether he's in a smeg fridge or whether he's actually in some sort of living reality. It's a half-life that he's cast for himself. The Russian public, fed state propaganda for years, is beginning to question whether the government is capable of securing a victory at all. Opposition voices grow louder, and political infighting among military leaders threatens to undermine the very strategic coherence that remains, the very little that remains. And Ukraine, meanwhile, is not just surviving, it's striking back with increasing precision. Ukrainian drone missile attacks, missile strikes are hitting strategic targets, including oil refineries, a massive one yesterday or the day before, military supply depots, air defense infrastructure. Early again in January the 14th, I think, Ukraine launched its largest aerial attack on Russian territory since the war began, targeting critical infrastructure in Bryansk, Saratov and Tula, and the timing was particularly damning. It came just a day after Russia had mistakenly destroyed its own air defense systems. And this pattern of self-inflicted wounds, coupled with Ukrainian strategic brilliance, has left Russia increasingly vulnerable. Moscow, once considered one of the most fortified capitals in the world, has come under drone attack itself, exposing serious gaps in Russian air defense systems. And the supposed might of the Kremlin war machine is proving to be nothing more than a Potemkin village, grand on the outside but rotten within. Beyond the battlefield, Russia's failures are isolating it diplomatically. Putin's reliance on North Korea for troops and munitions is a glaring sign of desperation, but the friendly fire incidents involving North Korean forces have strained that alliance. If North Korea starts doubting Russia's military competence, Moscow will find itself with even fewer allies willing to prop up its failing war effort to stoke the smeg fridge. Moreover, Russia's broader global standing has suffered appallingly. Once feared, its military is now mocked. Its economy is bleeding under the weight of sanctions, and its influence in former Soviet states is waning. Countries that once hesitated to challenge Moscow now do so openly, seeing its failures in Ukraine as proof that the Kremlin's threats are hollow. And Putin knows. He knows this war is unwinnable. As he counts the popsicles in the fridge, he knows that he's lost. His hope now lies in the collapse of Western support for Ukraine, and that looks, from that point of view, Trump has helped enormously. Putin believes that if transatlantic unity fractures, he may yet salvage something from this disastrous miscalculation. But Ukraine has proven resilient and continues to prove resilient. It's built strong ties with NATO and continues to receive advanced weaponry and intelligence support and moral support, as, for example, demonstrated today in London. It's built. Unlike Russia, Ukraine fights with purpose. It continues to receive advanced weaponry, intelligence support. It has unity. It has unity. I suppose is the thing that Ukraine has that Putin doesn't have. Along with life outside a smeg fridge, we know that Zelensky isn't freezing, and the knowledge that survival is non-negotiable. That survival, Ukrainians know what they're fighting for. The Russians and North Koreans have no idea. The past 3 years have shown that Russia's offensive capabilities are riddled with incompetence, corruption, dysfunction, partly because Putin doesn't like to have anyone with power, anyone with too much power, more power than he's got, anyone who might pull out a power supply from the smeg fridge. It's failed in every strategic objective that it set out to achieve as Russia. While it may make incremental territorial gains, it cannot achieve outright victory. Its military, plagued by infighting and self-inflicted wounds, continues to degrade. And the war at its core has become a testimony to Russian decline, a nation once feared, now humiliated by its own errors. And as long as Ukraine stands, Russia's failure will grow more and more pronounced.